Most people assume the strangest military bases are the ones nobody has heard of. That assumption is wrong. The strangest ones are the bases everyone can find on a map, point to on satellite images, and yet receive no real answer about what actually happens inside. 5 locations. 5 reasons why major powers spend billions keeping them away from public view. The question is not whether they are hiding something. The question is how much the public is actually allowed to know. Pine Gap. Drive far enough into the Australian desert, past Alice Springs, past the last petrol station, and you will eventually see something that does not match the landscape. White domes. Dozens of them. Sitting in the red dirt like a research campus that forgot to tell anyone it was being built. Pine Gap is officially a joint Australian-American defense facility. That description is accurate as far as it goes, which is not very far. What is publicly confirmed is this: the base operates as a ground station for American intelligence satellites. It intercepts signals. It processes data. It provides early warning for missile launches. And it does all of this from the geographic center of a continent that has no direct land border with any adversary. That last part is the reason it exists where it does. A base in Central Australia has unobstructed satellite coverage across a vast arc, from the Middle East through Central Asia and into the Pacific. It sees things that bases in Europe or North America cannot see as cleanly. What makes Pine Gap uncomfortable to discuss is not the satellites. It is the operational reach. Analysts and journalists who have investigated the base, including researcher Richard Taunter, have argued that Pine Gap's targeting data has been used in military strikes in conflicts Australia was not officially leading, and in some cases, conflicts the Australian public was not fully informed about. The Australian government has confirmed the base exists and that it serves joint intelligence purposes. The specific functions remain classified. The gap between what is acknowledged and what is operational is where the legitimate questions begin. If Pine Gap is watching the sky, the next base controls what happens on the ground and on the water beneath it. Diego Garcia. There is an island in the middle of the Indian Ocean with no tourists, no independent press, and no permanent civilian population. It is called Diego Garcia. It is shaped like a footprint, it is flat, and it is one of the most strategically valuable pieces of land on the planet. The geography explains the value immediately. From Diego Garcia, you can reach the Persian Gulf, the east coast of Africa, the Strait of Hormuz, and the approaches to South and Southeast Asia, all within range of the aircraft and vessels stationed there. During the Gulf War, during the invasion of Afghanistan, and during the Iraq War, Diego Garcia served as a launch point for B-52 and B-2 bomber missions. The base does not just support operations. It enables them. But there is a part of the Diego Garcia story that rarely appears in the same sentence as the military strategy. The Shigashans, the people who lived on the island, were removed. Removed is the polite word. Between the late 1960s and early 1970s, the entire population was relocated to Mauritius and the Seychelles to make way for the base. British and American documents obtained later showed officials understood what they were doing and chose to minimize it in public statements. The UK Supreme Court, the UN, and multiple international bodies have since examined the case. The legal and moral argument has never been fully resolved. The base functions because it is isolated. Isolated by ocean, by classification, and by distance from the kind of public scrutiny that exists in places with local press and open roads. But isolation does not always require an ocean. Sometimes it requires walls, clearances, and a federal law that makes the perimeter impossible to approach. Mount Weather. There is a mountain in the Blue Ridge Range in Virginia, about 75 kilometers from Washington. It does not look like much. No runway. No obvious antenna farm. A fence, a gate, and a sign that identifies it as a federal facility. Most people drive past it without a second thought. Mount Weather is the primary continuity of government site for the United States. That function is now publicly acknowledged. The idea behind it is straightforward: if Washington is destroyed, incapacitated, or cut off by a nuclear strike, a catastrophic attack, or a collapse of critical infrastructure, the United States government must be able to continue functioning. Mount Weather is where that continuity is supposed to happen. What is confirmed publicly is limited but significant. There is substantial underground construction. There are communications systems. There are facilities for housing and sustaining essential personnel. During the September 11 attacks, senior officials were moved to undisclosed secure locations. Mount Weather is widely understood to have been among them. What remains classified is the scale, the full list of who is designated to be there, the specific systems, and the chain of authority in a scenario where the normal constitutional structure has been disrupted. That last point is where the genuine tension sits. Continuity of government is a rational thing to plan for. Every serious state does it. But continuity of government also means that somewhere, a set of decisions has been made about who leads, who decides, and who is excluded from that circle, and those decisions have not been made through any public process. The question is not whether the facility should exist. The question is whether a democracy can plan for its own survival in secret and remain fully democratic in the process. From a mountain in Virginia to a field in Yorkshire where something much more visible raises questions that are harder to dismiss. RAF Menwith Hill. If you drive through the North Yorkshire countryside in England, past the dry stone walls and the sheep and the kind of landscape that looks unchanged for centuries, you will eventually come across something that does not fit. Dozens of white spherical structures, called radomes, sitting in a green field behind a perimeter fence. They look almost decorative from a distance. They are not. RAF Menwith Hill is a Royal Air Force station, which means it carries a British designation. In practice, it is operated primarily by the United States National Security Agency. The radomes protect satellite communication dishes from weather and, more practically, from visual identification of which direction they are pointing. The base's stated mission involves satellite communications, signals intelligence, and support for early warning systems. Those descriptions are accurate but incomplete. Documents released by Edward Snowden in 2013 indicated that Menwith Hill played a role in a broader signals collection architecture, one that gathered communications data at a scale far beyond what most people assumed was technically possible or legally authorized. The European Parliament investigated the signals intelligence network known as Echelon in 2001 and concluded that a system for intercepting private and commercial communications did exist. Menwith Hill was identified as a key node. What makes this particular base different from the others is proximity. Pine Gap is in a desert. Diego Garcia is on an island. Mount Weather is in a restricted mountain zone. Menwith Hill is in a field next to a public road, in a country with a free press and an elected parliament, and the full scope of what it does has still never been made public by either the British or American government. All 5 of these bases have functions that can be explained. The last one became famous for exactly the opposite reason. Area 51. Area 51 is the only military base on this list that became a cultural reference before most people knew it was real. For decades, the US government did not officially acknowledge it existed. Civilian pilots reported lights. Test pilots described aircraft that moved in ways nothing publicly known could move. The surrounding area became a pilgrimage site for people who had built entire belief systems around what might be inside. The CIA formally acknowledged the base in 2013. What the documents confirmed was this: Area 51 is a highly classified flight test facility. The U-2 reconnaissance aircraft was developed there. The State Route 71 Blackbird was tested there. The F-117 stealth aircraft was developed and tested there and kept secret for years after it was operational. The base exists to test technology before the world knows the technology exists. That function explains almost everything about its history, including the secrecy. When civilians saw an aircraft flying at 70,000 feet behaving in ways no known plane could, the government could not say, "That is our new spy plane, please disregard." So they said nothing. And the silence created a space that theories filled. The deeper point is not about Area 51 specifically. It is about all 5 of these locations together. Pine Gap watches. Diego Garcia reaches. Mount Weather survives. Menwith Hill listens. Area 51 develops what the world is not yet supposed to see. Each one has a rational explanation. Each one also has a perimeter, physical, legal, or informational, that the public is not permitted to cross. In most cases, that perimeter is not maintained because the answer would be harmless. It is maintained because the answer is complicated, or sensitive, or because acknowledging the full scope would require a different kind of conversation than governments prefer to have. Which of these 5 makes you the most uncomfortable, and what exactly is it that you think they are not telling us?